Your kids could get free or low-cost health coverage from Medicaid or CHIP. Even if you've applied before, they may be eligible now. Kids up to age 19 are covered for checkups, vaccines, dentist visits, hospital care, and more. And if they already have Medicaid or CHIP, remember to renew every year. Visit insurekidsnow.gov or call 877-KIDS-NOW. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
I'm here on the job site with Dale, who's a framing contractor.
Hey, good morning.
Dale traded up to Geico Commercial Auto Insurance for all his business vehicles. We're here where he needs us most.
Yep, they sure are.
We make it easy for him to save on all his insurance needs, all in one place, with coverage that fits his business and bottom line. Oh, I shouldn't have looked down.
It's all right.
We're so far up here.
Look at me. Take a deep breath.
Oh, I'm good. So good.
Get a commercial auto insurance quote today at geico.com and see how much you could save. Get more with Geico.
Welcome back to Used to Sew, a podcast about sewing machines, sewing history, and sewing culture in the past and present. I am your producer and co-host Aradia, daughter of your main host, T.R. Kelly, who is here today to talk to you about sewing rooms. Starting in the parlor in the 1920s and moving all around the house over the next 100 years, the sewing room is at once a sanctuary and an invitation. Sometimes sewing happens at a busy dining room table, but more often it happens in a room set aside for the purpose, where the normal demands of the world fall away and a different order can rule. This episode's purpose is to explore what we think of as sewing rooms, sewing space, and the eternal nature of sewing circles. We talk about what kinds of entertainment can cross the threshold, treasured scissors, and ideal sewing room equipment. Where we sew is an important part of the crafting process, and a valuable sanctuary to have in an overwhelming world. We hope you enjoy our exploration of the space that surrounds sewing machines, and feel inspired to share with us what your sewing room looks, or could someday look, like. Now we're here.
We're actually here. We've stashed all of our purchases in the sewing room, and we're here for another episode of Used to Sew. And today we're going to talk about, we've talked about a little bit why we sew, and that's an ongoing discussion, you know, for fit, for personal expression, for actual physical protective reasons. We sew for a lot. Where do we sew? Where do we sew? Let's talk about your sewing space in general. What is sewing space? When did it start? Do you have a sewing room? So much to unpack.
Do you have rules in your sewing room about what can and cannot happen? Who can and cannot be in there? Is it a sanctuary, a sacred space, or is it a corner of your living room? Do you just pop up your portable station wherever?
Oh, that's really, really good. Because I have seen you can buy various signs or make your own that you're supposed to put on your sewing machine room doors. My sewing room, no, you may not borrow the scissors, various things. Mama, where's the good scissors? Oh, no, you don't get to.
Yeah.
For those of you who may not be actual sewers, more of machine people, a good pair of shears can easily be $50 and up.
And if you use them to cut paper, so help me, there will be hell to pay.
Yeah, I actually send my shears back to their manufacturer for reconditioning and sharpening every couple years. And I have 2 Gingers and 2 Guggenheims and a couple of other. Shears are like sewing machines, and not just shears, but scissors and embroidery. There's as many types of cutting things as there are sewing things. But back to your sewing room. Where do you keep this stuff? Right now, I'm sitting in your sewing room, Aradia.
Yes, you are. It doesn't really sound like a sewing room. You might, if people with, good ears might be able to tell that room sounds a bit louder than it should. You can't really hear the fabric because all my fabric is in plastic bins. It's not really the acoustically soft space you might expect from a sewing room. I apologize.
Yes, and you don't have a zillion quilts hanging on your wall. That's another thing.
No.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. I'm sitting in here, I'm looking around. I see how many sewing machines? 1, 3 sewing machines, 2 sewing machines and a serger. Cork boards on the wall for putting pieces of projects. There's lots of racks with, like you said, totes full of fabric. And there's thread racks on the wall. There's some art. There's an iron. There's just all the things. And right here in the middle is what I feel is the best part of the sewing room, the cutting table.
Yes.
That's a real mark of you've taken a step up when you can have a dedicated cutting table. You're not setting up on the dining room table or the bed, cutting through your blankets. Oops,
Yeah, I got that cutting room table when I was looking for housewares when we had just moved, out of home and off to college, and we needed to get housewares for our apartment. And I spotted that cutting room table at the store, and I was just like, I don't even care. I'm buying it because it was, secondhand at a little college thrift store that, was going to a good cause. And it's a good table. I use that table for a lot. I appreciate having that layout table.
Now, I'm measuring the table right now. People are saying, well, why is that different than your dining room table? This table measures almost 35 inches from the floor to the top, which is too high for a dining room.
And it folds. That's the cool thing about these things is it folds. That's why I could have it in an apartment, was because it folds.
Yes, the leaves fold down. It's very clever how it all works together. And then you can just stuff it in the corner or against the wall. You actually have 2 of these. One of them you were putting puzzles on together for a while.
Yeah. And that, I think, is yours from a bazillion years ago. That's the one.
Oh, yeah. You know where I bought that? I bought that when I worked in the fabric store.
I figured.
1988. That table's been around, and it shows. Anyway, it's a great to have a table at the right height. And my dream table when I'm going to build my new sewing room here in a few years, is going to be a permanent flat top with all kinds of storage underneath. And you can walk around all 4 sides. And the iron cord comes in from the top where there's also good lighting. And it's going to be a gravity-fed iron with, the little reservoir. A person can dream, right? So sewing rooms in general. I'm part of several forums and Facebook groups where people show pictures of the sewing rooms and ask for organization tips. They should let us come over. No. As we've talked about in several other episodes, organization seems to be something that sewing people enjoy. And it might be their own sort of organization. Like you walk in a sewing room, it looks like a blizzard of fabric, but they know where everything is. So everybody's got their way of organizing their space. Like back to you talking about like it's a sanctuary. Mm-hmm. If you have a private sewing room, oh my gosh. Let's go historical here. Back when treadle machines were the norm in their big cabinets, where did they go? They went in the front parlor. They were a fancy piece of furniture, right along with the piano, the pump organ. We're talking middle-class family here. You've got a nice cabinet singer. It's in the parlor. Your ladies come over for tea. They see that you've got this beautiful sewing machine. When machines were they were new, where they didn't have their own special room. They were a part of the household furnishings. More upper-class homes, the sewing machine might be in a special room where your sewing ladies are working on your clothes. You're a rich lady, you don't do your own sewing. Your I don't want to say servants, but your hired people do that for you. And then in that room is the closet, the fabric, maybe even a little wood stove, or coal stove for the sat irons. Because there's no electricity at this point. You still got to press those seams open, so you've got your irons. They're special little stoves they made for sewing rooms. They have little rails on the sides. So, yeah, all these irons heating. Can you imagine how hot it would get in there?
That does sound kind of miserable. I mean, unless it's really cold outside, I guess.
That's true. Sort of like, yeah, man, I want to bake things in the winter, but in the summer, no.
Right, yeah.
But let's just go back to the average person's sewing space. Okay, so A lot of older houses, they would have a room that would eventually get the sewing machine in it. But where my own relatives didn't have fancy houses, the sewing machine sat in the front room. A lot of times there were guitar cases piled on top, but it was right there. I pictured my Aunt Ollie like that. And then the age of portables, post-war, portables, because people are moving into little tiny houses all their own. This is where we start to see featherweights and 99s and 301s with folding card tables, because your sewing room was something that was just kept in a closet and got out when you needed to sew. But then there became the thing of, okay, now we have a 3-bedroom ranch house and we have a guest room. That's where the sewing machine goes. Many, if not most houses now that still have a sewing machine, the guest room is the sewing room. Those are two really compatible kind of uses, because that's a room you want to keep clean and neat, right? And the sewing machine, now it's in a nice cabinet that's not out in the parlor. It's folding down and making a nice nightstand for your guest room.
Right. I feel like in my experience, people don't have parlors in the sense that they don't, like, that's not a space that they cultivate in their homes. Like, maybe physically the home has an old parlor, but now it's just the living room, right? Like, the concept of a parlor is kind of like, who does that? But everyone has a guest bedroom, ideally. I mean, like, most people try to have a guest bedroom. And almost all of them had a sewing machine doubling as a nightstand. I feel like I saw that over and over growing up.
A very mid-centuries and into the present sort of thing. And a lot of times people have, like, maybe inherited the house from their parents or whatever. They don't even know there's a machine in that piece of furniture. They just think it's a big, heavy thing, you know. Back to the parlor concept, though. Another thing that entered the parlor, I'm remembering my mom's stories and stuff here, even low-end houses had a corner where the special stuff was. The next thing, the radio. And we're talking the big, tall, old radios, you know, that all. And you sit in a stereo. But what really killed the parlor was television. Television does not fit the vibe of a parlor.
No, it really does kind of destroy the entire concept of a parlor.
Yeah. So the parlor sort of turned into the living room, which we don't use except when company comes over. And then you've got the family room. And that's where the TV and the couches is much more informal. Now I'm talking 1970s houses here, the split level. They were laid out this way. And a lot of times the sewing nook would be off in the corner in the basement or the lower level. But usually it was in the guest room. Now, that's when the kids are at home. When the kids move out, the last one's gone to college. Now we've got empty bedrooms. Howard, can I have a sewing room? Aha! We also in this era of split-level houses, if y'all remember the Brady Bunch, Mr. Brady had a room called the Den. Nowadays, we call this a man cave. And that's where he would have all of his sports stuff and, you know, the stereotypical man things of mid-century were in the den. Her sewing machine's in the guest room. Okay, the kids move out. I want a sewing room. If she's a crafty sort and she wants a sewing room, she wants to make a quilt maybe, or the grandbabies are coming, starting to be born, want to make some clothes. So this is kind of the beginning of the standalone sewing room in my generation of people. The houses were big for Boomer and Gen X families, lots of kids. But then those kids moved out. Now you've got all these bedrooms. Poof, the sewing room is born. The dedicated sewing room. Because you've got 3 bedrooms. One's the guest room, one's the master bedroom, and one's the sewing room.
Yeah, and because now you've got a sewing machine to put in it, you've got all these like fancy cabinets and extra machines and layout tables and thread racks and like all this stuff that has grown in the era of the sewing machine being a central part of people's lives. Now you have all this stuff you need to put somewhere.
Right. Well, now that you've got a sewing room, you want to furnish it. Like that story I told a few episodes back about the husband had built a new house, built her a sewing room, and she needed to fill it up with stuff. So she bought the new serger and the sewing machine and both cabinets and all the stuff. We start to see, now I'm guilty of this. When I was working for Singer, I was making fairly decent money. I had a 2-bedroom house from 1962. It was like a long ranch house. beautiful hardwood floors in it. I took the small bedroom and I made the big bedroom into my sewing room.
Oh, nice.
We're talking 12 by 14. Have you ever heard the adage, junk expands to fill available space?
Because there's so much room to store this cool fabric that you're definitely going to get to later, right?
Oh, and this was, I had only begun to collect fabric. I had been working for Singer. Let's see, I started off part-time, and then when I went to full-time manager of the department, it was a big jump in pay, and so I rented this house. Mainly because it was really bicycle commuting close to work.
Oh, well, that makes sense. Yeah.
I was having to ride all the way across town. I was like, no. For those of you who don't know me, I did not learn to drive till I was 30 years old. So I'm in my 20s. I'm commuting to work on a bicycle. I want to live close to work. Okay, so I've got a sewing room. Oh my gosh. I've also got a good job and a credit card. There is a little rhyme that I found online the other day.
Oh, yes, this.
Very much like, I know you folks are going to relate. Soft fabric, warm fabric, buy it by the yard. Happy fabric, pretty fabric, here's my credit card. That was a meme I found.
Another reason to limit yourself to thrifting.
Oh, that's true. But you still need a sewing room because, yes, you're going to buy fabric. You're one of us. So here you are in your sewing room. What do you need? Well, you need a sewing machine. Okay, got that. Serger, I bought that 6 days after I learned how to use one, I bought one. So I got a sewing machine and Serger, and then I started buying more machines because trade-ins. Oh, I need that. I have room for it. Now, this house also had a single-car garage that was attached. It was a duplex, 2 garages in the middle, house on either side. You know how many sewing machines I fit into that? I don't have a car. I just have a bicycle and a hot water heater out there. And pretty soon, about 87, 90, 100, lots of sewing machines. Mm-hmm. This was before they were a hot deal, and you could still pick up machines at thrift stores for $5. I don't know how many featherweights I bought for $14.99 at Goodwill before they were a big deal, right? So I had all these machines because I'm going to fix them up someday. But as we saw in the Still Stitching video, yeah, there's a lot of folks that want to fix them up, but there's not a lot of people who actually want to use them. That's why they're in thrift stores in the first place. Right?
Yeah.
So here I am filling up my sewing room. Oh, and then guess what? We're remodeling the store. We have some store fixtures that need to go away, including a full-size pattern cabinet.
Oh, hell
We're talking
yes.
one of those big metal McCall's. I got the McCall's one. Pattern cabinet with 4 deep drawers. Yes, I want that. You know how much stuff I can put in there? My growing button zipper, notion fabric, all the things. And none of this stuff was thrifted. I was buying all this from the store. Or a lot of times when the colors would change, they would have to, actually, this is real, throw away all the wrong color zippers. Right? Throw away. We could not give them away to thrift stores because, well, then people wouldn't buy new ones, right?
I would like to throttle all these executives, personally.
So our manager said, throw those things in the box right there, and then we'll have the stock boy put them in the dumpster tonight, and then I'm not watching to see if you guys look through them or, right?
A little gray economy.
Same thing with patterns. When patterns changed out every 4 times a year back then, they'd have to take the pattern guts out of the envelope and send back all the envelopes to the manufacturer for credit. They didn't want to send the whole thing back. It's too heavy. So here's all these pattern guts, which is the instructions, all the pieces.
Right. Everything except the cover, which,
Well, then they're also getting rid of the pattern books. So you go to that page and you cut that page out, right? Okay, so it's a big whatever. So the point being, I'm accumulating a lot of sewing stuff. Then I had to have a press. A press is like Godzilla iron. It's this huge, you put the fabric on the bed plate and then you pull down the top and it goes psss, and it steams on a whole huge front facing of an inner facing all at once. Ooh. Why do I need this? Because it's there. I have a credit card. I'm supposed to be selling these things to customers. So I tell myself, I need to buy this so I can.
You're selling yourself as hard as anyone else.
So now I have to have, okay, but I've still got plenty of space in my sewing room. There's a thing nowadays that people are getting. It's called a long arm quilting machine. These things are huge. You've got to have not just a sewing room. You need like a studio or a basement, like a shuffleboard table. There's no end of the things you can buy for your sewing hobby. Racks and racks of thread. Oh my gosh. What's my sewing room look like now? I live in an RV, not a big one with slides, not a bus, a 28-foot travel trailer with my partner who has his own hobbies. Where's my sewing room? My sewing room is 7 feet by 4 feet by exactly 5 feet 4 inches tall because it's over a storage bin. I can stand up in it. I'm short. My main sewing machine is, ta-da, a featherweight because it's tiny. It's tiny and I can put it in a little box. I have just enough of everything to make a few projects. I've got one rack of thread, one little basket of bias tape, 2 or 3 projects cut out and ready to go. So that's the thing. I do not have a cutting room. I have to cut things out, usually on a picnic table. Which is beautiful. Get some rocks for pattern weights, cut it out, cawing at the crows. And that's enough. And as I'm looking around here at your generously stocked sewing room, I'm seeing a lot of the stuff that I bought and hoarded since before you were born.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff that I've stocked my sewing room with is the leftovers of hoards from you and my mother-in-law, and like one random time that there was a bunch of stuff at an estate sale that we happened to swing by. Like, I have the remnants of hoards. That is what I've been stocked with, is literally the remnants of hoards from prior generations. And I have had to buy very few things in my entire sewing career, which admittedly has been very like stop and start. I often have that room sort of set aside like a dusty old temple. I don't actually go in it that often. It's very like cold and sad. I mean, we're talking about sewing rooms. What are sewing rooms? Where do we sew? Like, I have literally had times where I haven't gone into my sewing room for like 2 years because I just have too much of a stop and start relationship with the thing. So it's like a sanctuary in the cold and empty sense rather than in the warm and inviting and shutting the world out sense.
Oh.
My room has been both.
Yeah, that's true. And that's why we keep talking about making it into a guest room.
I mean, yeah, basically, but...
Well, not making it into a guest room, but incorporating maybe a futon or a fold-out couch.
At least a futon, yeah. Yeah, one of those futon couches.
Because your cutting table folds up, you have room.
But also, it's cool to be able to leave my projects completely splayed out and not have to put anything away when I'm done. It's pretty cool.
That's what I'm hoping for. Yeah, when we build my sewing room here, for you folks following along at home, I just bought 30 acres of nothing out in the desert, and damn it, I'm having a sewing room. I'm going to have a wood stove for my irons. This is totally off grid, so we'll be talking treadling and running the featherweight off of a jackery, which is a little portable battery dealy-hoo, which works great, by the way. We'll talk about sewing off-grid in a future episode. But anyhow, since I'm starting from scratch and I can build the sewing room I want, and I've gone through the huge hoarded-out home sweatshop phase several times, what do I really want now? Well, I want room to have all my machines set up. I see you're picturing a warehouse, right?
I'm like, so how many machines is that?
Well, I would like to have at least the Davis vertical feed treadle has to be set up all the time. The Electric Singer 101, probably a 99 with the buttonholer attached. Once I get the 29K cobbler patcher put back together, that'll be in there. And then I'd like to have my Supermatic Elna accessible because that's when I need a zigzag. That's
I was just wondering,
out.
where's the zigzag coming in? Okay, the Elna. Gotcha.
The green Elna. I love that. And then, of course, the featherweight is always standing by for away sewing.
Of course, naturally.
But it's so cute. It probably isn't ever going to be a main sewing machine when I have my bigger sewing room. But if I want to take it out, sit out on the front porch or something. Yeah, and there'll be a treadle on the front porch, probably a Singer 66. Maybe the white rotary. Okay, so I want to have machines set up. I want to have this big cutting table in the middle that's got drawers and bins underneath. And I want to have good light. I want to have a gravity-fed iron. No, that's not going to happen. See, I wanted that, but you cannot run an iron off-grid. They just take too much watts. Unless you've got a huge solar system, you're not running any electric irons.
No. Electric heat is very expensive on the electric part.
I'm actually going to be trying a solar iron experiment. We'll be tuning in for that.
You are taking my sad irons to go subject them to magnified solar energy.
Oh, man, I've got an old, my mom gave me a Fresnel, that's spelled Fresnel, with a capital F, big lens that's a magnifier for reading books, and it's quite large, but it can really concentrate some sun. There's a guy online that uses one of those lenses off a projection TV to like explode rocks and stuff.
Oh, dear.
So I'm thinking I can heat up some little sat irons. For those of you that don't know about sat irons, the kind we've got here are the little metal cores, and then there's a shell that clips over them. So you heat up the cores on your heat source, your wood stove, your coal stove, your solar panel, Fresnel heaty thing, and then you clip the shell over the top, and then your hand isn't getting burnt. And of course, there was asbestos back in them. We're gonna take that part out.
Yeah, but the metal itself actually says asbestos on it.
It was a brand
printed into the thing.
Yeah,
so you'll never get rid of the asbestos completely. But it's got this really nice old wooden handle too. Like the wooden handle is very old and used. It's a well-used wooden handle. It has a vibe,
Oh, how many grandma hands have been on that thing? How many women have used this? And I say women because, mostly. Guys who sewed were usually fine tailors making men's clothes, but who sewed the majority of clothes for the family? That was Ma.
Yeah, that was another thing that we were talking about before, was how much sewing rooms are like a women's space.
Oh, yes.
Like this is an aspect of what a sewing room is like because of the gendered division of labor that has existed throughout the, period and context that we've been discussing. Like there's a really strong, like, gender bubble happening there. And so you were telling me, like, men entering the space create a very strong vibe shift. It's a rock in a pond kind of thing.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, as you were mentioning the sewing room sanctuary earlier, and in the video we were watching last night, the one lady that collected the beautiful vintage suitcases and colorful mid-century Japanese machines, the more I looked at her room, the more I thought, that's a golden rectangle shape, which is associated with higher vibes and churches. I mean, it's a geometric architectural thing. But as she had these machines and suitcases and other beautiful collections of hers, and she felt very sanctuary-like as she was sitting there. She really wanted to share that peace with people and invite them in to see her stuff. I thought that was really cool. But that wasn't her sewing room.
No, it was not. Yeah.
It was a different kind of a sanctuary. Your sewing room is where you create things. It's your studio, right? It's your artist's space. A lot of the trade-in cabinets that I would get back in the day had cigarette burns on them. Mm-hmm. And I'm picturing some of my mom, smoking was, everybody smoked in mid-century. I mean, everybody's mom smoked. And every time I'd see these cigarette burns, I would be picturing some lady with her hair up in curlers, and maybe she's listening to Tammy Wynette on the country radio, and her cigarette's burning down, and she's trying to finish her kid's costume or whatever it is. And it's just, that to me is part of the provenance of that cabinet. I don't buff them out.
Oh, yeah, totally.
I'll definitely clean a machine that reeks of nicotine, though, and that is one of the hardest things to get off a machine. The worst place to keep your sewing machine is in the kitchen. I mean, that was another thing, sewing room. Where else can it go? In the kitchen. with all mom's other appliances, right?
Okay, yeah. Seems silly to me, but yeah, no, it's all mom's stuff. It's mom's appliances, just like the mixer and the whatever else.
That's where mom works. She works in there, certain shapes of kitchens and dining rooms. The dining room next to the kitchen. A dining room is another classic sewing room because you probably have a table. And that table's better than getting down on the floor or trying to do it on the bed. The bed's about the worst.
It seems like it could work, but no, it can't.
Really and truly, picnic tables are great. You can go to a park and cut out.
I mean, they're the right size, yeah. And you got the seats there that you can, kneel on or whatever to get up and over the thing. And yeah, totally.
So after the spare bedroom, the dining room is kind of a classic sewing room in mid-century houses. Again, it's not quite a parlor, but your cabinet wants to look nice. Your ironing board's probably in the closet, and you can take all the centerpieces off the table if you need to lay something out, cut out. But it's not your sanctuary. It's kind of more like your sweatshop. You're in there. This is where you cook. This is where you clean. This is where you sew. So it's not really a sanctuary space.
And this is where your husband and your kids and the dog and the neighbors can all come and try to get your attention and interrupt.
Mom, he's poking at me funny. Mom, fix it. Mom, the dog just puked.
Right. Yeah, all of that is happening in the dining room. It's not happening in the sewing
sanctuary. No. Also, often dining rooms, believe it or not, have carpet, which is not what you want in your sewing room. Pins, needles, no, you do not want carpet. Shakeable rugs, maybe, no carpet.
Yeah, that is one fail of my sewing room that you are currently in. If you look at below your feet, there is carpet, and occasionally I have occasionally found a lost pin, and it makes my husband very reluctant to come into the room because I'm only 99.9% sure there's no pins in the floor, and he is paranoid about getting stabbed in the foot.
You need one of those contractors' magnet bars that they pick nails up at the work site.
I think I actually have a weak one behind the door that I do use sometimes.
Oh, I do see it.
Yeah,
it
is over there.
Oh my God, that's great.
For that exact reason. But I do want to remodel the floor in there at some point to be proper wood instead of carpet.
Absolutely. My favorite sewing room floor would be a nice, warm, like marmoleum or linoleum squishy vinyl, because you're standing a lot. You're pressing, you're cutting out. So definitely not stone, concrete.
Oh, no, you want something soft. Another thing about sanctuaries that you were mentioning earlier before we turned recording on was what kind of entertainment you bring into the sewing room. TVs, radios, etc. And you said that that's actually a point of contention in the sewing world. I'm not part of the sewing community at large. It's really not my not my social circle at all. So tell me about this controversy.
Well, I'm not a hardcore anything, but I dip my fingers in the quilting world and leather sewing, just all aspects of sewing culture, and visit a lot of forums and news groups. And there's to have a TV in the sewing room or not. And some people are very adamant that is not going to come in my sewing room. If I want to watch sewing videos, I'll do that on my iPad on the couch or something. So a lot of people just have really strong feelings about, and not just, I'm watching sewing videos, but, a news flash just came on about the latest disaster or whatever. Having a TV in your sewing room that's hooked up to the outside world is a really obnoxious guest. If your sewing room isn't the dining room, you actually have your own room. You get to shut yourself in there without the kids, the dog, the husband, the neighbors, or the latest disaster. Mm-hmm. And same with radio. I used to listen to radio in the sewing room a lot, but then I would look at the thing I was sewing later and remember what disaster I had been listening to. This plaid shirt reminds me of the latest disaster, because I was listening to that when I was sewing it.
Right.
So you're sewing your vibes into your stuff. What kind of, if anything, media is going to be in your sewing room? I like to put on myself really instrumental only. I don't want to hear anybody's problems or thoughts. I don't want lyrics. I just want instrumental. And I want it to have kind of a pulse to it, keep me moving, but not be raucous so I can't hear myself think. So I kind of go with electronic stuff, maybe instrumental dub, sometimes new age, but then I'll get really lost in the paisley patterns, man. So I like to have something that's got a little beat to it, but isn't really banging. But that's just me. What about you?
I really prefer, well, I just listen to audiobooks and podcasts constantly. So, of course, that's just what I bring with me into the sewing room.
Right,
but my choice of content, because sewing, I mean, I'm not very good at like intuitively sewing. You know, I can intuitively cook, but I cannot intuitively sew. I need the instructions in order to sew.
Right.
And so processing words while processing words is really hard. I can do it sometimes, but reading the instructions and listening to an audiobook is pretty hard. So I'll have to pause it like while I do that. So I often will not listen to either new books or to podcasts. I will listen to books that I've listened to before, so I can kind of mentally tune them out and like not really have to hold that in my like memory banks, because I just want the sound of the voices. I don't actually care about hearing the story beat for beat because I know it already. I don't listen to music. I listen to music for work more, so I guess that hasn't really occurred to me to listen to music to sew, except when I'm sewing with you, because then we're talking and it's like I'm not listening to a podcast. We're listening to music together and like chatting about whatever. So
yeah, we usually have a little boingier music. I know we put on a lot of regional Mexican, cumbia, norteña.
Yeah, you bring me your curated Mexican music.
When I want to hear voices, but I don't want to get sucked into the story, I listen to la radio in Espanol. But the better I'm getting in Spanish, the more I'm understanding the storylines. So it's not working so well anymore. It's the same storylines. It's like, oh, mi corazón. Oh, the guy's like bummed out again. Okay, his heart's breaking. But yeah, sometimes when I lived in Washington, I would listen to CBC radio programming en français. And, you know, I'm hearing all these French voices talking about very important things. And I'm just sewing. But then I don't sew that meaning into my, yeah. But yeah, I see what you mean about books on tape, something you already know. That's kind of like, it's a rhythm that's already in you.
Right.
It's like,
yeah. Yeah, or like, you know, if I'm doing something really mindless, like recently I've been working on making a stuffed animal. And so like, I was having to do a bunch of fiddly shit to make the interfacing attach to the fabric properly. And it was just like, cut this thing really, really carefully around the edge of every single piece. And it's like, all right, I can listen to anything while I just do this snip, snip, snip. It's like I had to do it in like 3 different sessions because it was just so much like fine little snip, snip, snip. So I could listen to whatever I wanted. I needed my entire brain to be distracted while I dealt with this like finicky little snipping thing that I had to do.
You know, that makes sense because a lot of when I go to quilting groups and people are, you know, cutting out their pieces, they're rotary cutting stuff, or they're doing something really repetitive that they don't have to think about. There's this whole sequence. I know when I used to work in a drapery shop, okay, I've got 50 yards of hand hemming to do here.
Yeah,
You know, I'm gonna listen to something.
Yeah, distract
so
me.
That's when I listen. Yeah. Talk radio is really big in drapery shops, sewing shops. All the ones I've worked in, there was either books on tape or talk radio going all the time, which I couldn't hear above the din of sewing machines. So, you know.
Auditory processing for the lose.
Oh, yeah. You know, but sometimes our boss would put on these books on tape that were kind of spicy. And all of a sudden the sewing machine sounds would stop because everybody was listening. And she'd say, back to work, girls. We're listening to the bodice ripping part. It's all about the fabric. Oh, God, he ripped the fabric. No.
That's funny.
Big sewing room. Big sewing room is... You've got the whole basement now.
Ooh, yeah.
Some houses, that's where the husband sets up in the old days, his railroad layout. Or the kids' game room. But again, once the kids have gone off to school, there's this whole finished basement. Basements are also great sewing rooms. They're very quiet. However, they can get musty and moldy, which is not always good for fabrics or machines. So, but a basement, now you can have your friends over for a stitch and pitch.
Woo!
This is another reason to have a lot of machines and a big cutting table and lots of light and places for people to put their ashtrays and beverages or whatever your sewing room protocol is. So having a large sewing room, now you've got a social space too. Is it your sanctuary or is it your little sisterhood of stitch and bitch? You know, back in even before sewing machines, women would get together to do their needlework in the parlor. No men are in there. And this is where secrets are traded. The sisterhood of sewing. We're calmly doing our sewing here, but we're also speaking subversively in our sanctuary. This happens. Like information about my daughter's in trouble. Do you know anyone? Meaning a doctor who can do a procedure, right? Men never have gone into the sewing room. It really is a sanctuary. And it was a place, is still. Trad wives, I'm sure, are doing the same thing, getting together over their sewing machines and their bread recipes and bitching about Bob and Steve and David.
Right? Yeah. No. Also, it's a room with, much like a kitchen. There's actually quite a lot of weaponry in there. Sharps and hots.
Oh my God.
I mean, thinking back to, when I was a little kid and, my mom has a sewing room. And so she's like, you can come in here, but you have to be aware that there are two very dangerous things, sharps and hots.
Sharps and hots. Oh my God. Yes, that's true.
Some of my first lessons in safety was like, you got to leave the iron and the scissors alone. You're allowed to play with pins. Pins are safe for learning, but we're not fucking with the dress shears or with we're not messing with the dress shears or the iron. We are not messing with either of those things. Not at all.
I think I taught you hot with a low voltage light bulb. Like, this is hot, but it's not going to damage you. It's like, feel this is hot. The iron is even hotter. But yeah, you used to come in and love pinning tissue paper to fabric. Yeah. This is when you were a little kid. My sewing room at that time was 10 by 6. It was a really odd shape, but it was my sanctuary. Your dad had his computer nook.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which I also loved playing in.
Oh, gosh, yeah. That was like,
I got to
and they
go
were
in
right
both.
next to each other. So the hobby space was right there off the living room. But yeah, I had a sliding door that I could shut. And, I'd have all my little shelves of skulls and bones and beads and doodads, and then there's my box of bias tape. So it was just kind of all of my stuff, my space. Even now in the RV, my little tiny sewing room takes up quite a bit of space, but my partner knows I need that. I need to be able to alphabetize my thread and
Yeah, no, collecting the right stuff to curate what you need in a sewing room is an important skill.
And like yesterday, we were looking at your button collection, and I saw 5 ones in just the perfect colors that are going to go with my featherweight display. So that's the thing, having at least one little shelf in there just for the curated doodads. People collect little like thimbles or certain embroidery scissors or some little. I myself have a weakness for old, beautiful colors of thread on wooden spools. And those buttons that I got from you are like really 1930s kind of colors. Just love those pastel colors. So yeah, I could go on and on all day. It's like architecture. But the takeaway is no matter how big or small your sewing space is, think of it as a creative sanctuary. It's your space. You have your stuff there. Even if it's in the dining room, you could get a shoji screen. I think that's what they're called, those little folding screen. As much as you can, if you can, make it your space. Even if you've got to pack up your featherweight and your fabric and go to the park and use a picnic table to cut out a project.
I love it. And next week, we have a follow-up to this discussion.
Oh, yes.
Why don't you tease what we're going to do next week?
Oh, I just ran across this story this morning about a woman in Nebraska who has a collection of over 300 sewing machines. She's passed on, and her sewing machine and fabric and notion collection is actually going to auction, I think, today and tomorrow. But there's just a really great story, and we're going to talk about her next time what she's got and how she did it and why it's important to us who love sewing machines
and sewing rooms
and sewing everything.
Yeah, sewing everything.
Let's sew something.
Sewing sanctuary. All right.
Stay threaded. Don't spill your buttons. Get rid of the carpet in your sewing room. Don't forget to oil your sewing machine. Bye.
Bye. And there you have it. A discussion about sewing rooms and their ability to be sanctuaries. From the guest bedroom to the dining room to the kitchen, sewing machines and their cabinets and the projects made on them take the story of the space with them through their lives. Did you find yourself recalling an odd nightstand in a guest bedroom in a new light? Let us know in the comments. This whole discussion really makes me want to spend more concerted time in my sewing room, just so it isn't such a cold place. Just hearing our discussion back while editing was enough to make me feel inspired to get back in there and work on that stuffed animal project. I think I also have some buttons on the way to me in the mail from another family member. Stay tuned for updates on if I do or do not get some new old buttons for my collection. As a reminder, we are unofficially sponsored by Stagecoach Road Vintage Sewing Machine, who do repairs and restorations. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and you can support us by sharing the podcast with your friends, and also with money at patreon.com/used2sew. Thank you for listening to us here at Used to Sew. We always welcome your additions, corrections, and feedback in general. Please reach out to us via email at usedtosew@gmail.com. Used to Sew is a production of Fox and Raven Media. For more podcasts from Fox and Raven Media, visit our website at foxandravenmedia.com.